Hare Krishna. Welcome to Thrive In Bhakti. Badra Sain here. Hope you've been following my podcasts. You can always click and subscribe, please, to this channel if you're watching on YouTube. If it's not just from an audio, if you're watching here on the channel, please subscribe below. Lets me know, and you can always write comments. Today, I wanted to talk about a really common question that people ask me, and they say, "What is Thrive In Bhakti all about?" Which is a really good question. And I have explained this a little bit in other podcasts, but I just wanted to, come from another angle. I want to explain that Thrive In Bhakti is there because I want us to take a wider perspective on why so many devotees, well, we all have a struggle, the struggle to please Krishna, but why are many devotees, whether they've been around a year, 6 months, 6 years, 16 years, they end up struggling with their sadhana, struggling with their habits, struggling with regulating their lives. And I give a bit of a compassionate perspective on that, and I try to ground devotees in being very realistic and honest and transparent about how to see why they might be in that situation, and then how to address that. Of course, how do we address the challenges? So we took, because in the Shastra we hear about Kali Yuga and irregular habits. Everyone's unlucky, unfortunate, and always disturbed, and this is all true. And all I do is just come down to like ordinary language. Let's just talk about that. What does that really mean for us in our lives? Whether we've been around 10, 20 years or whatever. Let's have a think for a minute. Why is it I find it hard? Well, I think one of the reasons, and one of the things to really take into account in the ingredients of why we may be struggling, and in whatever area, it could be in relationships, not just sadhana. People have good sadhana but bad relationships, and that happens a lot. People are in leadership positions but they're not leading very well. There are people in leadership positions who are doing very well with people, but they're not necessarily doing well with their sadhana. And it's complicated. Everyone's individual. I don't think there's one thing for everyone. But I think having this wider perspective is very useful in tackling the problems and issues that we're facing, so we can get the right mindset and attitude towards the issues. So this is key to Thrive In Bhakti, is developing the right thinking when we're addressing issues. And I stress this again and again and again, because it takes a while, and it did for me, for the penny to drop, that it's not just about doing differently, it's about thinking differently first. So let me give you a picture. Okay, so let's take my life. When I grew up, I grew in an army life. My father was in the British Army, and we moved around a lot. I was born in Germany in a British Army hospital with my brother, Phil, and we went to Cyprus for a few years, and we moved around a lot, back to England, different army camps, and then back to Germany. And we finally moved back in England when I was, I think it was 8 or 9, the late 70s. And then we stayed in an army camps there. And then, so I moved around a lot, didn't have a very stable home growing up and background. And my father was always being stationed abroad, serving in Northern Ireland, going away for times. My mum was hardworking. They were working class. My mum was hairdressing and doing little network marketing, Tupperware little things to earn extra money for the family. And me and Phil were just my brother and I, we were just kind of living life and going to school, and, we're just going through the system, the education system. And then, teenage, we moved out of the army. My father left the army and went into civilian life, which was really, really hard. And I use that analogy sometimes when, in one of the talks I'll be doing later on brahmacharis or temple residents leaving and then going and living outside the temple. And it's kind of like what non-devotees experience, like myself, my father, and that when they leave the army, you leave all that kind of culture and support, and suddenly you feel like you're on your own, and it creates an interesting dynamic and sometimes some negative feelings about, being abandoned and not so connected, or getting the attention we used to get from the temple, which is another topic. But there was I, and, growing up, and my father left the army, and we got a first home, and living in a small village in Dorset in England. And we went off to some boarding schools. The army paid for us to go to boarding schools, and off we went. Why am I saying all this? Because I just went to a military school. We got a great education. We got discipline and stuff there, and lots of sport, and came out at 16. And it was like, what do I do now? I didn't, I didn't have like parents showing me options, or it was all about, well, you decide what you want to do. But all I knew is, well, whatever my brother's doing, I'll do that. That's how I kind of was thinking things. He went to college, so I'll go to college. He went to university, I'll go to university. So I just thought that's the way you're meant to do things. I didn't know anything else. I wasn't learning financial IQ. I wasn't learning emotional IQ. I wasn't learning life skills. I was just living life, and I was a bit of a punk in my late teens and stuff. I was, doing what young teenagers do, mucking around, and got into music. Then went to uni, kind of got through that, and came out, and I was just really bewildered what to do in life. I hadn't grown up very educated around success principles. I did learn in military school some discipline. That's one thing I did learn. But I think for the majority of persons listening on this call that went to normal schools, we didn't really learn, hard grind, how to work hard. We didn't really grow up with, learning about regulation in our teens and, building the mindset for success, understanding the laws and principles of success. So I was at university, and usually university students about abandoning any kind of discipline, regulation, just, getting the degree, and, doing the usual things. We were drinking, smoking, and, just doing what we would consider normal life. And then in my late 20s, after working in different jobs, having different girlfriends, trying to make it in life, and things not working out job-wise and relationship-wise, I kept figuring out, why is this happening? I'm doing everything I've been told. Everything I thought I was supposed to be doing, but then I actually, just from a material point of view, like many of us, we just we hadn't actually been told about life, how to have a marriage, what does a marriage take, how to prepare for a marriage, like relationships. What does that mean? I didn't grow up with, how does wealth created? I just go into uni and I come out and I get a job and I get a salary and then I'm happy, right? So that's where most of us came from. We were materially disabled or inadequately prepared for life. And then we come to Bhakti, which I came in my late 20s. And suddenly we have a goal. Suddenly we have a huge goal. We find out that we're non-material, and suddenly, if we're going to take it seriously, we've got to become trained, or we've got to start chanting 16 rounds, 2 hours, disciplining the mind, like in the Nectar of Instruction. Spiritual life begins with mind and sense control. Suddenly, this is all hitting us. It's like, wow. Of course, it's nice in Bhakti in the beginning with the kirtans and the prasadam, but then if we're actually going to become sadhakas and fixed up in our Krishna consciousness, suddenly it's like, get on top of the mind, get on top of this, material duties, change your idea of relationships. Everything's upside down, literally. And, and think about that. How long is that going to take to rewire us Westerners? It's not going to be overnight. And we're coming in, remember, with not a lot of discipline. We haven't learned about mind and sense control, even materially. What do I mean by that? Well, successful materialists, specialist army officers, Navy SEALs, sports people, those who are successful as entrepreneurs in innovation and finance and companies, people who are become highly academic like Einstein and these kinds of professors. These people have dreams and goals. They're outcome focused. They have this goal and dream and call within them that they're willing to strive for, and they apply either consciously or unconsciously, the attitude and mindset for success. They're willing to change, to transform, to do whatever it takes to get there. But for 90% of us, 95% of the world, we don't think like that. We were just drifting through life, drifting through the process of the modern education system, drifting through just work to work, week to week, just working, and then the weekend party lifestyle, have a beer, save up, maybe have a holiday at the end of the year to kind of get by, try to have some savings, and then maybe get a mortgage. Oh, then you get a girlfriend. We have no ultimate real purpose or outcome focus we've really been striving towards, that's shaping our destiny and our habits and willing to inspire us to be disciplined. We're willing to go to work and earn money, of course, to be disciplined, to have enough to have a good time on the weekend, but all short-term focus, not really dream focused. So here we are. Then we come into Bhakti, and suddenly we have the greatest dream of all: how to free ourselves from material existence, how to uncover our spiritual identity, understand the supreme absolute truth, the love divine, the divine love, Lord Krishna, how to understand, then to go not only on this to the spiritual platform, not just to Brahman, but to go beyond, even in Vaikuntha, to head to Krishna's personal, the spontaneous platform of loving devotion to Krishna in Vraj. Wow. That's a big goal. That's a big dream. And of course we can do it. But when we come in, there we are in material life. We were working, studying, getting by. We had relationships. We had all these habits. And then suddenly we've got to stop all that. Suddenly we have to then have these new habits and new things. We've got to become time management. You had your life. Now you've got to add in 2 hours chanting, your hours reading, particularly for grahastas or those who hadn't lived in brahmachari ashrams or in ashrams. It's rising really early, getting to bed early. The working life now has changed. People are working in the hours on the internet, working from home. Suddenly we've got to keep that all together. And we've come into Bhakti without any training how to do that even materially to the highest level. So I'm chucking out compassion today. I'm chucking out like, hey, let's be compassionate to each other. Know that it's going to take time to build up and to develop, which we can, the skill sets and the thinking of success that's going to help us manage our material affairs and most importantly, will help us put in our spiritual affairs and our spiritual commitments and our spiritual habits, right? So many devotees who are struggling with, you have kids and you're working and you've got so much going on and you're studying, you've got exams and you've got 16 rounds, you're following regular principles, and you've got to be you got to know how to handle yourself. You've got to know how to, be conscious. As materialists would say in books, successful materialists say, you've got to stop drifting. You've got to become conscious. You got to see what habits are serving you, which habits are compounding negatively for you. A great book I always recommend to devotees is, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, a fantastic book that teaches you how habits, even though very small, if done a lot or consistently over time, they compound into very negative effects in the future. I've talked about this before. So it's really key that what is Thrive In Bhakti? It's giving that mindset and the practices and the accountability and to help devotees manage themselves better, build skill sets, increase their capacity to handle the increase of these demands that spiritual life puts on them while they're trying to deal with their material affairs. And even if someone's in the brahmachari ashram, even if someone's in the single man's ashram or single lady's ashram, still the same mindset's required, because those are not lazy ashrams. I've done talks on this before. The brahmachari ashram isn't a place to be lazy. I don't want to work. I don't want to deal with the opposite gender. Well, yeah. I mean, as I said to some brahmacharis a while back, I said, I'm inspired when I see brahmacharis working from 9 to 5. If I see brahmacharis doing a couple of hours books and they're just doing madanga practice all day, and that doesn't inspire me as a grihasta, I don't accept that. Brahmachari ashrams means you don't have to deal with economic expansion and you don't have to dealing with family and children. Therefore, you should definitely be easily able to do 9 to 5 book distribution or prasadam distribution and outreach. And I think that's really important. Otherwise, you're being lazy, totally lazy, because you don't have any excuses. So that's really important. That's a side point, but it's still, as you say, in the single ashrams or the married ashrams, with that capacity and duties and services we're doing, we'd have to know how to manage those things and keep our sadhana together, keep our mindset right. And coming into Bhakti has these vows, these commitments that we have to keep alongside dealing with the problematic material world. So try to see that the issue with the problems is just the way that we've been conditioned and raised. Generally, for most of us, we've come through the material education system with the fixed mindset. We've been processed through So it's not so much our fault that we have problems managing our affairs and managing our habits and managing our um, you know disciplining ourselves and being disciplined. It's not necessarily something that we had prior to Krishna consciousness, but it's something we can learn, though, become aware of, and just allow ourselves to gradually build that mindset and the skill sets to be disciplined and controlled, so we can manage our lives better. And that's what we do in Thrive In Bhakti. We build that foundation of material mode of goodness, mindset and habits that will help support us so we can chant nicely, have time to hear and chant about Krishna, be consistent with that, read consistently, but also have the emotional resilience to know that hits are going to come. The material world's going to throw things at us. We've got to be prepared. One of the things in Thrive In Bhakti, I say, it's like, you've got to expect that every day you're going to get mixed happiness and distress. If you expect anything else, then you're when you get married, it's going to be mixed happiness and distress on the material platform. Don't be shocked. Don't get bowled over. We see young people today, they've grown up, many of the new generations, where they can't understand why happiness is hard. Why is it hard to be happy? Because that's the way it's always been in the material world. This is not even, we hear this in Shastra and we kind of get this directly with realization from transcendental personalities, but smart materialists say, well, life is just hard. You choose your hard. If you do what is hard, life becomes easy. If you do what is easy, life becomes hard. Smart people figure that out. You don't have to be a devotee to figure that out. But when people are growing up and the new generations are coming up very emotionally weak, feeling like their emotions are everything, wondering why they have to struggle, why they have to deal with even insults and people, negative things happening to them, they just break down. This is something we have to deal with in ISKCON as we bring new candidates into the Bhakti process. Leaders and cultivators have to be aware of these sensitivities of the new generations because they're changing all the time. So Thrive In Bhakti is about rebuilding these and the mindset and the thinking to get it right, so we can then apply skill sets and learn skill sets of habits and discipline and accountability, so we can become stronger with our sadhana. That means our hearing and chanting about Krishna, association with devotees, developing character, developing the right person, because it's who we are and how we think that matters, not what we do. When we can think right and we can be that person we know we are, then we can do right. We can do the right things. So what's a practical small example is things like you have children or you're working and you've got to do your rounds. How to, not used to these things. How do you deal with rising early all the time, getting to bed on time and chanting all your rounds in one go, or having quality chanting for a period in the morning before you leave for work? And, you've got to figure that out. That's not happening. You've got to address, well, what's the solution here? What can I change? So what we do in Thrive In Bhakti in this example is we say, okay, what's the problem? Well, I can't do this. I can't get up in the morning. This is happening at night. I'm not sleeping here, and I'm getting up at this early. I'm tired in the day. And I said, okay, so that's the problems. Cool. So let's switch to a growth mindset. And they go, what? I said, well, ask your brain, what is it that you can change? What is something in your day and your night that you can stop doing? Or what is a solution here to this specific problem? Let's just take one, like getting to bed on time. And then you start telling the brain to come up with ideas rather than focusing on the problems. And then getting mentorship, having someone give you perspective, we start to discover there is time and things that can be edited, subtracted, or adjusted that can create a little bit of space to begin to chant, get up a little earlier. So what a lot of the issues is sometimes I find with people who have problems with their scheduling and their chanting or whatever is they think it's just going to change overnight. Again, wrong perspective. It's like, let's just begin with a slight adjustment. You're going to bed at midnight, right? So why don't we just start moving the clock back? Can you go to bed at quarter to 12 instead, just for 2 weeks or 30 days, and gain that 15 minutes and make that 15 minutes up earlier and see how you get on. Okay, so they do that and they're thinking, well, that's not enough. 15 minutes isn't what I want to be. I want to be like going to bed at 10 and getting up. I said, no, just 15 minutes. Can you move 15 minutes? Because right now you're all over the place. Okay. So for 1 month, they tick off and be accountable. What can they move back 15 minutes? And they'll probably do that 80% of that 30 days. We're not looking for perfection. And then at the end of those 30 days, I say, well, did you manage to do it most of the time? They said, yeah. And I said, so what's happened? He said, they start, and what happens is they all say is that, wow, I can change. I can adjust what I thought was not adjustable. I have moved things. And what happens is they gain faith and confidence now. They're like, yeah, I just have to adjust things a little bit, 30 days at a time. And then we move to, well, how about we go to 11:30 the next 30 days? Okay, let's do that. Let's get up now we're up half an hour from where you were before. And let's try to be consistent. And there are other ingredients in my program that help and assist this, which I don't have time to go into on this particular podcast. So it's about learning how to make changes scientifically through habit books by those who've done this before, who've understood how to change things. And the beginning of it was like just getting people to think differently about the problem. Start directing the brain, the algorithms towards, well, what's a solution? Let's forget about the problem. What can I do? What am I capable of? Can I shift just 1% in the next couple of weeks or 30 days that will make that shift? This works with relationships. When you got relationships with a devotee, a relationship you're having problems, with your spouse. It's like we start focusing in on what's one thing you can do to make your partner feel better. Can you send a text every day saying something nice? Oh, yeah, I can do that. Well, just do that for 30 days. And these habits compound over time. And we learn also that habits can compound negatively. So we can look at little things that they're doing in that relationship, that little comments, or I had to do that in my marriage, being English and a little bit sarcastic and wit, and my wife being from a different culture, that kind of talk never sat with her very well. And I just thought, well, she'll get it. So I had to change the way that I made little comments over some years before I read these books. Once I started reading and learning about these things, that started to change the relationship over time, but it took time. This is mode of goodness, right? So we've summarized, we've come into this bhakti process, generally most of us. Some of us, this doesn't necessarily always apply, but I'm sure in one area, I'm not sure many people, maybe a very low percentage of people came into Krishna consciousness already understanding discipline, already had sense and mind control in an arena of life where they became high achievers and very successful. They understood the laws of success in terms of getting the right thinking. I'll give you an example. Tonight I'm giving a loft talk, an outreach talk to people, and I'm going to be talking about the happiness spectrum, how they've been taught to be happy is on the low level end of the spectrum. But you probably didn't know there's a higher level of spectrum of happiness in the body, happiness in the mind, happiness in the intellect, and then the non-material happiness. And today we see clearly people are directed towards body. So I want to show them, like, did you know that there are higher levels of happiness? Not all happiness is on the same platform, even materially. And for a lot of people, that'd be like, well, I know, no one ever told me that. I didn't know about that. I just thought you just go out and have fun and hook up or whatever and have a party, and that's happiness. Have a party, right? That's what I thought. And so what I'm revealing to them is that they weren't told certain things. They didn't know. They didn't know what they didn't know. And I introduced that with introducing the cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki, which is 4 ways of creating money. There are 4 ways. Now, maybe some of you don't know this, but we are learned to go to school and get a job. That's it. It's how you make money. You just have to get a job. The job is you. I am a teacher. You identify as the teacher. This is my career. This is what I want to do with my life. I want to be a teacher. But we're not a teacher, we're a person. And most people earn money because they want a lifestyle. But we're trained to think like that, like an E quadrant person. That's the majority of people. But then some people go, okay, well, if I'm going to work, I can at least work for myself. So they go into the S quadrant, self-employed. Now, they still have active income. They still have to show up, but they have their own business. They earn more money generally. Doctors, lawyers, they also fit into this camp. But you might have a traditional business, electrician's business, building business. But still, you got to work hard, a lot of hours, but you definitely can earn a lot more money than being an employee generally. But Robert Kiyosaki says, well, no, but there's also two other ways to make money, and that's through making passive income and cash flow. And that's through B quadrant scalable businesses and investments. And in that quadrant, the left side, E and S quadrant, the right side is the B and the I quadrant. And the B and the I quadrant is where you create cash flow, and then you can create investments. And that's where money works for you. Now, how many of you in school, and those who even did business degrees and accountants, because I meet them all the time, learn how to build B quadrant businesses that create cash flow that then create safe investment? I didn't even know it exists. I didn't even know the cash flow quadrant existed till about 10 years ago. I just thought you go to school and you get a job. So I didn't know what I didn't know, right? And he explains that those on the right side of the quadrant are successful only if they change their thinking, their mindset to the right side of the quadrant. You have to think differently to be successful in a B quadrant and in investment. You can't think as an employee or as an inactive income person. That thinking is different. So I'm not going to get into the different types of thinking, but this is part of like what we're learning in Thrive In Bhakti. If you want to see change in your life and you want to see growth and transformation and get over struggles, you've got to change the way you think. You've got to move from your pre-Krishna conscious thinking, I'm talking materially, to a new way of thinking, a success-minded thinking, because we're in a transformational business, as I explained. We're into transformation and growth. And we can't stick in our old thinking, even materially in Bhakti, like I am like this, I am the body, I am this, I'm no good, negative thinking, fixed thinking, problem-focused thinking, process-focused thinking. We are outcome-focused thinking, which is, Robert Kiyosaki says, is also the same in finance, same in sport. If you want to be successful to go to the Olympics, you have to focus on that gold medal 100%. You are outcome focused. You're only going through all that trouble to get the medal. So similarly, we're only going through what we are in Bhakti because we want to obtain love of Krishna. And in fact, that love becomes so powerful in the end, it's not dependent on Shastra and Sadhana, although those are still externally practiced. Right? So remember, so that's what is Thrive In Bhakti? We are shifting the mindset for success that will assist us even while we're still in the neophyte or in the lower stages of Bhakti, will stabilize us materially, give us the right thinking and mindset and habits that will help us and assist us in growing and transforming in our spiritual life. Right? So that's Thrive In Bhakti. Let's change our thinking. It's thinking is where is the biggest root to our problem and most of our problems. And we just have to think, and guidance and perspective is there to change the way we see something. But we're often caught in habits of how we see things, how we see ourselves, how we see the problem, how we blame others. It's all about changing our thinking ourselves. And that's how I help grow. We grow into leaders in Thrive In Bhakti, genuine leaders, not positional people. We want leaders are people who lead by example, who can think this way and then act this way. So I hope that was helpful. That's a little insight into the growth and the leadership level and the benefits of the Thrive In Bhakti program. And these podcasts are to assist anyone to start thinking in that way and moving in that direction, and a resource to help devotees move forward and overcome all the struggles. And that comes from just changing the way you think. And then the way that you approach the problems will change, and you can overcome problems and move through problems much quicker, much faster, and transform. So I hope that was useful. Thrive In Bhakti signing out. So all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.